and welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Garth Neufeld, along with Eric Landrum, your podcast hosts. As the name implies, we center on conversations about teaching, but we often veer into other interesting topics, which is the in stuff. This is episode number 128, where Eric had the opportunity to sit down with Jane Halonen, Ken Keith, Elizabeth Yost Hammer, and Rik Seefeldt. These, if you haven't put it together, are former AP Psychology chief readers, and it is a great conversation. But before we get to that, did you know that Psych Sessions just passed 100,000 unique downloads? We want to thank you for your support. If you have not yet had a chance to rate Psych Sessions on Apple Podcasts, please go right now and leave a rating there, as this helps people find us and will get Psych Sessions out to more teachers of psychology. Also, feel free to use Psych Sessions in your courses or with your grad students. We have programming related to writing, career, professional development, and more. And there is more coming soon. A website, new programs, and new hosts. And if you have an idea for Psych Sessions, please reach out to us. We're easy to find. Now, before you hear this interview with some of the past AP Psychology chief readers, please allow me to share some of my listening tips and some of my favorite moments. Listen, I'm just going to get you to this interview, or should I say conversation, as quickly as possible because it's that good, and each of these people have been guests on Psych Sessions in their own right, and you should go back and listen to all those episodes because they have fascinating backstories. But this is the shared experience, and probably the first time that these four have gotten together and just reflected on what it means to be an AP Psychology chief reader. It's such an exclusive club. And I think there's two things that happen here. One is history. We learn a lot of the history, and it's just weaved in and out with fun stories of the past. We learn how the AP psychology reading has changed over the years, especially as it's gotten bigger and bigger. Some of the great things about that, some of the enduring things about that, and then some of the drawbacks about getting bigger and more bureaucracy. Jane said something in the interview that really stuck with me. And that was that it felt to her a little bit like being a dean, which I think the others kind of resonated with, which was that you as a chief reader stand between the people who have a job to do, an important job to do, which is get those exams read quickly and accurately, and the administrative support and kind of machine that is ETS and College Board. And so there is a particular skill set required to be able to manage that. I suspect that chief readers are very quick on their feet, which kind of comes up, very good with people, and know how to make wise decisions quickly in the moment, and manage just a lot of different considerations at once. And that's what comes through. So we get the history of the AP reading as it's moved around. Some fantastic stories about people. We then get the second part is we get a look behind the curtain. What it is like to actually do that job. I love Eric's question at the end. It has to do with, hey, people who are going to be chief readers in the future, particularly our next chief reader, what kind of advice do you have for them? And that was great. Or one of the other questions I loved in this interview was, what do you want people to know about the chief reader job? So good. There's lots of laughs in this. There is such a familiarity. It is, unfortunately, a little bit like you are looking into the fishbowl. So many of us just won't be able to relate to what the actual experience is like, but it's fascinating to get this insight. It doesn't remove the value and the entertainment and just the interest that you're going to have in this conversation. There's 5 people on the mic. I wouldn't even say that Eric interviewed these folks. He was just sort of there. So I think I'm throwing Eric under the bus. It's the easiest interview he's ever done for Psych Sessions because he just spun these 4 up and then let them go, which is really fun. But no, Eric was very thoughtful. He really made this happen with Jane. And this all kind of came out of Rik Seefeldt was moving out of the chief reader position. All these chief readers showed up to say, for his farewell. And then this conversation comes out of it. So it's great. The 5 of them. Now it is 5 people. Imagine you're on a recorded, Zoom call or something with 5 people and you're all trying to contribute. There are times where a question is asked and you don't want to step on somebody else's toes. And so there's some silence. So, that's fine. It's just the nature of a 5-way conversation, but we didn't edit too much of that out for you. I think you're going to love it. These are 4 wonderful people, 4 people that I consider friends. I know Eric does as well. As Eric and I both have been readers at the AP Psychology reading, we do have a little bit of insider knowledge of some of this, although at different times, certainly. I guess I'll just end by saying the leadership I have read under Elizabeth and Rik, the leadership that they showed through the years that I've been part of the reading is remarkable. I know that Ken and Jane before that were also very good at what they did. It's a huge job, and they should be congratulated. And I know it was worth it to them because of all that they got out of the reading, as we all have. But at the same time, I know that there are hundreds and hundreds of us who are grateful that they were in the driver's seat. Gosh, I said that wasn't going to be long. It's long, but worth it. Enjoy this conversation with some AP Psychology chief readers.
I am so thrilled to be here today. This is an AP Chief Reader Psych Sessions special. This idea comes from Jane Halonen, one of our favorites in the world. And she had this great idea to bring together AP Psychology Chief Readers who are beloved by thousands of people around the country who have been doing AP readings for probably close to 30 years, I would imagine. I'm going to get out of the way and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and talk about, first off, just their timeline of when they served as chief readers. And I'm going to sit back and enjoy their conversation. They got together recently to celebrate Rik Seefeldt's resignation, departure, demotion.
I would have never resigned.
Bridge program to freedom, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to step out and let you all introduce yourselves.
Well, since I'm the most senior ex-chief reader here, let me start. Jane Halonen, University of West Florida. If I remember correctly, Ken and I started reading together the same year. I think we were in the same question.
That's right, 1995.
95. And it was an awful question that the modal score was 0. And I remember screwing around so much and pranking people that I was a little surprised I even got invited back. But I got the invitation for the next round and it said, come back as a table leader. I was completely convinced that was an error because if anyone had been watching me, they would have known I was not an optimal reader. I was having a great time, but I was not an optimal reader. And so I called Sam Cameron, who was the chief reader at the time, and said, Sam, I'm delighted that I can come back, but I think you've made an error. And he said, no, Jane, we noticed what you were doing and we need to harness that effort for the good. And so I don't recommend that now for people who are aspiring to move up in AP leadership, but apparently I pranked my way to becoming chief reader. And Ken, why don't you go next because you followed me?
That's right. In fact, in terms of if we counted age, I'm probably the senior member of this group, but let's not go there. Jane and I started together in 1995, along with a pretty outstanding class of people, and included Barney Bynes and Dave Johnson and a number of other folks we all would know. I thought it was a mistake when they invited me the very first time, before I'd even had a chance to screw things up. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Lincoln, Nebraska on a hot June day in 1995, and the phone rang, and it was Randy Ernst, who said, "What are you doing this week?" And I said, "Oh, nothing special." He said, "Well, can you be at Clemson by tonight?" And I said, "Well, you've lost your mind. What are you talking about?" And then he said, "Well, we need you. And whenever Randy says something like that, I'm there." And so I got a limo because I'd missed all the buses and all that sort of thing, and ended up in the dark at Clemson, not knowing where to go at midnight. Finally found my way to a room, barged in. Dave Johnson was asleep in that room, and we became roommates. He was also a rookie and had arrived earlier in the day. And I do remember Jane being a prankster along with some others, and that's been a long tradition at the reading. And I read until 2012 with a couple of times out, and it's noteworthy to mention one of the times I was out, because it was 2007, and I was due to become the chief reader designate, and due to some health issues, couldn't go to the reading that year in Louisville. After having scouted out Louisville with Jane and taking a carriage ride around the downtown and all that sort of stuff, then I was unable to go. And so I told the folks at ETS I should just bow out. But she and Jane and the folks at ETS worked out an agreement, and I'll be forever grateful for Jane to stay on an extra year. And so I became chief reader after a year as chief reader designate. I think I was chief reader from 2009 through 12.
And I would just follow that up and say there's a reason chief reader stint is 4 years, because 5 years is too many. Right, Rik?
I think so. Probably 1 year too many is right.
1 year too many.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Elizabeth Yost Hammer, and I go by Liz at the AP reading, and I followed Ken. And I started the reading in Maryland in 1998, I think. And it may have been 97, actually. I think it was 97. Don't really know. In Maryland. And Charles Brewer, who's been on my mind this week, was my first TL. And Chris Hackala was my partner, my TL, my first, TL. And Chris Hackala was my reading partner. He was my reading partner. And when that got announced, Jane squealed how cute that was. And, in lifelong friendships, right? The reading has impacted my professional development and my professional identity and my friendships. It's just, wow, where would I be without that? But the story I want to tell from my first year is I'm a conscientious, serious student. So I'm going to do the best I can. And I'm focused on that rubric. It's true. I am. But I felt like none of the reading was stressful. I knew what I was supposed to do, and I was going to do this. But I was super stressed because I was told that we had to do an acorn skit. And this was a huge part. I think it was Loretta McGregor.
It was Loretta.
A huge part of the tradition of the reading. And we're evaluated by that, even though we're not really evaluated by that, but we better do a good job. I mean, I lost sleep. I had gastrointestinal distress over this acorn skit, which, by the way, rocked. It was really a good acorn skit. We were at a campfire and we played all of our people we looked up to. And then afterwards, they told us it was the first ever acorn skit. What? First ever acorn skit.
It was a good prank. That was.
And Jane, I really think you were the kind of last chief reader that got to really enjoy those kind of pranks. I think Ken maybe a little bit, and then definitely the end of Ken's time, my time, and then into Rik's. The readings changed a lot in those kind of ways. But dang, I was gotten.
I did get a pie Liz, I did get a pie in the face in Kansas City.
I do have a very clear memory of you, Liz, in your first year coming into one of the lounges and saying with complete sincerity, has anyone figured out that we could just get together and read without all these tests? I mean, that we could just get together and be together without having to grade anything? That's when I knew you were hooked.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Rik, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Yeah. Rik Seefeldt, University of Wisconsin, River Falls. And I just served out the last year of my term. I was chief reader from 2017 through 2021. My first year of the reading was 1999 at Trinity College in San Antonio. And the way I got to the AP reading was I was department chair, had become department chair at River Falls, and we had never really had a real evaluation done of our department before. So I turned to APA, list of departmental consultants to evaluate, and they sent us Jane Halonen to come to evaluate our psychology department. And that was a great experience, and we learned a lot from that. But one of the things she encouraged me to do was to apply to be an AP reader at that point. And I didn't really want it because I hate grading. I hate it. But at any rate, I decided to go for it because Jane thought it was a good idea, and I had a lot of respect for her. And so I tried it, and it was a great experience. And I remember our acorn skit was a takeoff of Devo's Whip It is what it was. We had flower pot hats, and I portrayed the table leader, my first table leader, who was Randy Smith. So I portrayed him with a whip, whipping acorns who were scoring.
And I think you were from Wichita Baptist University.
I was from, yes. I had my sign that said Wichita Baptist.
Wichita Baptist.
I remember that
University.
skit.
Yeah. But yeah, the reading has changed so much. So I really appreciate Sam. It's interesting to hear how Sam was the one who was sure to invite people back who were merry pranksters, so to speak, because that did set a precedent and for how much fun those readings were and how much, all the different kinds of things we were able to do at the reading beyond the scoring of essays, which has definitely gone almost completely by the wayside now. So now it's pretty much scoring essays.
Well, my explanation for that is the test question was really boring, and I had to do something to liven the experience. And so I was passing notes to the other room and challenging the physics readers to volleyball matches. And once I pulled one prank, I got accused of doing every prank that followed. And so I really didn't have to do too many more pranks to have that reputation firmly entrenched. But I do realize that the pattern of prank playing, it sort of fell away in the years that I was the chief reader, because I think people were afraid to prank me. So there wasn't a whole lot of pranking. I only remember one prank, and it was really lame, that a group hid in a room that I could easily find. So I think I walked into the room and said, is this the best you can do? And then that sort of put an end to, I don't think there were any more pranks after that.
Yeah, I don't know that it was fear of pranking you. It's just how could you possibly prank you? So my favorite thing with Jane was I would sing the Darth Vader song every time he walked in the room. It was like right when they were redoing the Star Wars and all, so it was on my mind. And so I just remember doing the dun, 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 like every time. Because how can you prank you?
Well, you did pull a prank. There was a period when I was having table leaders assessed halfway through to get some feedback on how they were doing from the readers. I don't know if you remember that. And you and Charlie, I had matched you and Charlie that was a partnership from hell. When you handed over your reviews, every review was negative, including the review that said, they don't do any work. They're just outside smoking and peeing all the time. And so by the time I got to that one, I realized that there had been some manipulation of the data, shall we say.
Yeah. My first year as table leader, I was paired with Charlie. So it might have been that year. And I loved working with Charlie, loved it, still do. And he said, so at the end, I said, maybe we can be table leader partners again. And he said, nope, they put the newbies with me and we'll never be partners again. And we end up being QL partners, table leader partners. Anyway, Ken, I think I stepped on you. I'm sorry.
No, you didn't step on me. Well, at least not today.
So just to bring it full circle, so Sam Cameron was the very first chief reader.
Second. There
That's
was
right.
a woman named Kathy who was
Kathy
the first chief reader.
I'm sorry, very, very first.
Yep.
Or just 1 year, or how many years?
1 or 2.
Couldn't have been more than that because Sam was there by 94 or 95.
Okay,
Right.
so thank you.
Mhm.
Do we know Kathy's last name?
I used to know her last name, and I can't remember it now.
Same here. First year of the reading, by the way, was 1992.
92, right?
Is it Harris? What's her last name? Harris?
No, I don't think so.
Ignore that.
I don't think
And
so.
about 3,000 exams in 1992, that first time, 3,000 students took it. Is that what I'm recalling?
May not have even been that many.
And then the other chief reader that most psychology folks would know of is Jim Freeman, who's not with us today. He's still with us, but not with us today on this podcast. And where does he fall in the sequence of all y'all?
We miss you, Jim, by the way. Listen to this.
Yeah, definitely miss
Sam,
it.
Kathy, Sam, Jim, and then me, and then that's when this.
Oh, Jim's that early. Okay.
Yeah, Jim was the person that was before me.
Okay. Very
He
good.
was the third chief reader.
And I have to say, also one of the greatest people on the planet to prank.
And he was fun to prank. That's what I was going to say.
Do you have a
Poor
favorite?
man.
Do you have a favorite that you want to share?
I do.
Oh,
I
the
do.
bus. Share the bus.
Yeah.
If we're making a list of the reasons why Jim probably isn't at this meeting,
This
you
could
know?
be it. I'm not sure where the idea came from, but on the night that we were scheduled to go to the softball game, the baseball game, we had 2 buses. And I was on one bus, and I persuaded people on the bus to act drunk when they got off the bus. I just said, trust me on this, just stagger a little bit. And because AP readers are cooperative, they did. And in fact, some overdoing it. But in the next
Even
morning,
acting, probably.
Some of us weren't even acting.
yeah, that's probably true. I forgot about that. The next morning, we delivered a bill from the bus company indicating that the riders on that bus had been out of control and had caused damage to the on-bus toilet. And there was a bill for something like $1,500 that ETS was going to have to pay.
And I believe one reader got off the bus wearing a toilet seat around his neck. As if it
and a
had come
toilet
from the
seat showed
bus
up
bathroom.
hanging over the doorway of one of the rooms, which Jim, I don't think he ever saw. But to aggravate things, I did approach one reader who was especially innocent. And I said, how are you at acting? And she said, I'm okay. And I said, could you go into Jim and complain to him about the unprofessional behavior of your colleagues on bus number 2? And she said, I'm on it. And so she went in and complained to Jim. And you could see him when he got upset, he did this very characteristic. He put his hands on the sides of his face and rake like he's raking the skin off his cheeks. He would just do that over and over again. And because his office had a window, we could all see that. So he came out to me and said, Jane, do you know anything about what went on? And were you on bus 2? And I said, yeah. And I said, nothing happened. Because, I was telling the truth, nothing happened. And we just carried on for a little while. And then finally he said, if this is a prank, it's not very funny. And I said, but if it were a prank, it would be a damn good one. And at that point, he leapt across the desk and kissed me out of sheer relief that he was going to have to write a check. But it was the most coordinated. It was the most coordinated prank that I've ever been involved in. It was a lot of fun.
And we'll be right back. The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by Hawks Learning. Time is a finite resource. As an instructor and a parent, I get it. There is a lot on our plates. Managing multiple classes, grades, and assignments can take up more time than we would like. Hawks Learning can save you time and sanity with intro psychology software designed with you in mind. With tools like pre-created homework and test templates, as well as automated grading and progress tracking features, Hawk software supports you so that you can better support students. See it for yourself. Get free chapter projects, example videos, and review materials at www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions. Again, that's www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions.
Since we're in the avenue of the pranks, do any of you want to share any others that either you were the victim or the perpetrator, either Vic or Perp?
There was a great one at Trinity, perpetrated on all of us by one person. I'm blocking,
Fabio.
isn't it? No,
It was Fabio.
Jordan.
Oh, was it Wes?
Wes Jordan, I'm pretty sure, was behind it.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
We had a social room in those days of our own at our readings, and one of the readers, Rick Cashow, had arranged a margarita machine to have in our social room. And Wes, I'm pretty sure it was Wes. In fact, I'm 99% certain it was Wes. Printed up a letter on Trinity University letterhead that was ostensibly from the security chief, and it went through a litany of things that our readers had done to violate local rules and regulations, including contaminating the campus fountain and using a contaminated drink machine in our room that had been condemned because it was full of roaches or something like that. And there were maybe a dozen things like that on this list, and then arranged to get it passed around so that readers saw it one by one as it passed around through the room. So none of us had the opportunity to say to somebody else, nah, this has got to be bogus. So we were each reading it and thinking, wow, this looks pretty real. And it was, among other things, said that we would have to find another location for the following year and possibly pay for damages and things like that. And that was one of the best I ever saw because it involved everybody as victim.
Well, it was also signed Officer Do Right.
Yeah, something.
And Jim
like
went from room to room. I think there were at that time maybe 6 rooms altogether, 3 for each question.
Yeah.
He went from room to room consulting on this memo. And then when he came back to the chief reader room, and I think I was in an assistant mode at that point, he looked at the memo and said, "You don't think this is a prank, do you?" And I said, "Jim, Officer Do Right?" And then we got, the face scraping reaction. And he said, "So I'm going to have to go back to all the rooms and explain it was a prank." And I said, "Yes, sir. That's exactly what you're going to have to do."
That's your job.
Yeah, it was Wes.
I will say, by the time, even when I was a question leader, what had happened is we had grown, and you were heading there, Eric, right, with the stats and all that. There's a great article in TOP with the first author, Ken Keith, which talks about the history of the reading, if any of the listeners want to go see all those stats. But we grew so much. And then when we moved from these small rooms where you had a little more intimacy and we started reading in larger ballrooms, now not like huge ballrooms yet, but larger ballrooms even, the pranks got a little where it generated like exclusion rather than inclusion, in terms of like there'd be pranks that people would try to prank me up front, and then the people on the way back didn't really know it was a prank or know what people were laughing at. And so at that point, we really did try to shift for some more fun, like, because the pranks are fun, but that like what Kim was just saying, that either involved everybody or everybody could know about it, or at least it just got hard. Bigger we got, those kind of things got harder. And then it happened more maybe in leadership groups, so that in the chief reader room, pranks and funny things would happen there. And then this is the social psychologist in me coming out. And then what happened at the reading is people started forming their own social groups, and they would do that kind of things with each other. But the big old readings, like in the Trinity days, it just got harder to do. And then to me, it just made me feel like, okay, people are feeling excluded, or it's, one time as question leader, when I had to explain to half of the people over here, this is what just happened. Like, that's not a funny prank. So, yeah. So it's really, it's the culture change, right? The culture change that what we gained in popularity from this wonderful high school teaching of psychology community changed the reading for sure.
Yeah, so I think it's hard for me, having been part of the prank era, to understand how strong the commitment remains for people coming to the reading who didn't experience the sort of giddy fun that was part of the era when I was involved. You know, whenever we talk to people who are reading now, for the most part, they have the same strength of commitment, and I can't wait to get back there, and this is the best professional experience I've ever had. They have exactly the same litany of comments about how great the experience is. And yet I feel a little sad that they didn't get that intimate fun.
Yeah. Oh, I feel sad too. One thing I'll say, and Rik probably has more to say about this than me since he's been these years, especially with some of the remote reading. But when I talk to some of the readers this year, they're finding it in their groups. You know, they have found their people, they have found their groups. And so they're just like, oh, I can't wait to get back there with all my AP girlfriends and just us go out and drink afterwards. And, you know, so they're doing that fun thing. It's just not orchestrated. I think you use the word. It's not orchestrated. It's not community shared.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, the history that was created by the people who were there early on and had that culture has led to the ability of people to continue to do that. We've looked at some other disciplines where people don't have nearly as much fun, don't have the same tradition. And so I think it's not that it's been lost. It's morphed into something different that still is good, but in a way that maybe some of us old timers wouldn't understand.
Yeah, morphed. That's a perfect word.
Can I just interject? I think that's a credit to all of you, and to Sam and to Kathy and to Jim. It's charismatic leaders who got the gist of the task and gave enough rope that people could have fun, both in the reading room and outside of the reading room. I mean, you get your community, you get your tribe, and that's to your credit. I saw some of the funniest things I've seen in my life when I was a reader. Those acorn skits, here listening to the Composite. Oh my God, those were the funniest things ever. And I know both of those things are gone now, but clearly,
Eric, you actually should explain what a composite is, because I don't think new readers would.
Well, I'll let you. I just want to interject that. But
don't we all have to? Don't the four of us then have to like log off and not hear what a composite is? I don't know what a composite is. I never heard of a composite.
Do you want me to do it so you all have plausible deniability?
Because we could all get fired. Oh, wait, we already have been.
Back in the olden days, do you want me to talk about Band-Aids and all that old good stuff? You know, remember those? The Composite was readers, when they found something funny or amusing, would take a sticky note and they would handwrite the reply that a student made that was funny or humorous or sardonic or sarcastic. And we would collect those, and then someone would step away and type them up on some borrowed computer. And during skit night, someone would get up and read them audibly. Sometimes they were typed up and distributed. That stopped, when the internet became more popular, because there was a real fear of those becoming public, and you don't want to shame a student. But, they were literally the funniest things I've ever heard in my adult life. To just the classic misunderstandings and students sincerely trying, but not trying to be funny, but just being funny in the stream of consciousness.
Charlie Blair Broker was a master.
Oh yeah,
master. Sorry, Rik.
Do you remember the time that Charlie Blair Broker and Wes Jordan read them together up on a raised platform?
Well, they did that several times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one time they ended with a certain salute.
No.
Which got them both into big time trouble with the ETS and people who were trying to mediate that disappointment, I have to say.
Yeah, they did.
I'd go back to the essays. That one of the things, and I confess, I used to do this, that I would go to NITOP and read those composites at lunchtime as a way to recruit readers. And it was wildly successful and so much fun to read, because the composites, it was as though Charlie, and was it Rob, Wes would be the other writer.
Wes often did those,
They would create an essay that looked like it was done by a student, but it would contain all of those errors. And so from one of those years, one of the students wrote that an experiment was flawful. It was both flawed and awful. And I actually use that as a real word now, that, it's really flawful.
We're talking about all the funny things and the irreverent things, but I'd also say that nowhere in my career have I seen a group of people so dedicated to working so hard as the people at the readings. And I mean, I think these things go together. The atmosphere created by the congenial, collegial sort of feeling is conducive to the kind of work that these folks do.
I think when you were talking, Ken, when you mentioned that when you were first called up to do the reading and Randy Ernst had called you and you just said, well, if Randy wants me to do it, then I'm going to do it, And I think that attitude has stuck around for the most part, with 95% of everybody that's at this reading has that same exact attitude. So Jane talked about how people got off the bus and she said, hey, do this for me, act like you're intoxicated or something. They do that, but they'll do most they want to be a part of the group. So, the whole, I guess, so the whole social identity of being part of that group is still really important to people. And they do take it really seriously, and they want to do a great job and represent their schools and their discipline. And that's just really inspiring. Is how hard they really do work for the good of the team.
So this is rarefied air to have the four of you as chief readers together. What would you like AP readers to know about serving as chief reader that they probably don't know? Is there some sort of insider baseball, something that you could share that they might enjoy learning?
And we'll be right back. The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by Macmillan Learning. At Macmillan Learning Psychology, content matters, and no one exemplifies this more than Dave Myers, the world's best-selling psychology textbook author. From his engaging Talk Psych blog to his meticulous revision process, Dave Myers is always at the forefront of psychological science, and he is a master at making it all relatable to the real lives of all kinds of students, from his flagship comprehensive textbook, Psychology, to his briefest, most affordable option, Psychology in Everyday Life. Macmillan Learning Psychology, where content matters, especially when authors like Dave Myers make that content relevant to the full, diverse range of students taking intro psych. To find out more, please visit macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions.
Well, I can take a swing here. Being chief reader is a lot like being a dean. I know a little bit about both of those jobs. Unfortunately, it looks like it's all glory, but the amount of work that's attached to it is extraordinary. In fact, I remember, I don't know if it was my last year or the year before last, one of the years we were in Louisville, I wore a pedometer on my first day. And I logged 25,000 steps.
Yeah.
And so much like when you're a kid in school and you don't know what the principal does, when the principal's in his office or her office, that same sense of, well, what does the chief reader do? The chief reader's not reading anything, so what could they possibly be doing? You're running from one fire to the next and trying to make sure that whatever the fires are don't contaminate the process, and trying to ensure that readers are having a reasonably good time, and that readers are behaving reasonably well, and sometimes they don't. So it's a really hard job. I found the job in the management chain that was the most fun was QL, without question. And then once you become chief reader, it's like, oh crap, this is a lot of busy work and minutia, and you're removed enough from the reading that you don't know what the fun things are that are going on.
I totally agree with it. QL being the most fun. I feel like the skills that I gained and the experience I got at chief reader moved me forward, and that was really valuable to me. But wow, QL was a fun job. I guess I would want one thing for readers who are listening to this to know is that as chief readers, we are employees, right, of ETS and employees of College Board and in various ways, and so we don't always make the rules. It's not, Liz is not letting us do this. we don't always make the rules. And so
don't always make the rules. We never make the rules.
We never make the rules. And so we try to, so I think the fun challenge, one of the fun challenges I had about a chief reader where so many rules changed. My first year as chief reader, we extended the reading day by 30 minutes. The same time that we were in a hotel we had to take a shuttle to. So we're talking about now an even more extended reading day because of this. So I think the challenge and the challenge I have with this is that, following the rules, getting behind the rules with also having to have your same personality behind it. I want to keep my personality of this reading. Well, also, this is what we got to do. So how can we do this? And one thing I did after the end of that reading is I went into all the rooms and I read a list of new rules for next year. And I just made them as absurd as possible. And, so that, we don't make.
What would be an example of a rule that you made up?
That they couldn't, the only one I can really remember well is that they couldn't sit down on the shuttle anymore, that we're still taking the shuttle and they couldn't sit down and they had to start reading on the shuttle. So we were going to install reading stations in the shuttle, something like that.
I agree with what Liz says. And I always thought of my role as sort of being a buffer between the readers and the bureaucracy to protect the readers from the things they didn't need to know or didn't need to do, and make sure that they understood the things that they did need to know and had to do. The other thing that most people would never understand, except this group would, is how much off-season work there is in being chief reader, and what you do when the database is empty and you still need 50 more readers or something like that. And that's a year-round sort of thing that isn't seen by anybody except somebody who's done it.
Or on the year where you need 300 extra readers.
Right. And then
they're calling up former chief readers saying, hey, could you be a reader?
Yeah.
And then they're refusing to let those people read. So let's just complete the loop there.
Yeah.
So that was
I never did get approved.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
But I did get some swag. They sent me some swag as an apology.
That's nice.
I said, really, I prefer an apology.
Oh, boy. Yeah, in many ways, I think being chief reader, I agree with everyone else's sentiment that question leader is the best job. Question leader is the best job. You're still involved in the academic discussions about the points and about the concepts and all that, and you get the people things, and that's a great job. The chief reader job, I really thought I was outside the realm of the questions themselves, and then dealing with other things, all the different major parts that are moving around, which I thought was really challenging and really fun. It just seemed like there were, hundreds of decisions to be made every day without much time to make them.
Yeah. And you realize that that's where the buck stops.
Yeah. So that's terrifying and exciting, but all in all, again, you're always surrounded by fantastic people around you, the members of the leadership team. So even if you did happen to, even on the one time where a decision I made wasn't maybe the best one, I think there was one. There was one like that. But even in those times, there's someone there to pick up the pieces or to make sure that nothing really awful happens. So in that way, it's easy because
I was going to ask as a follow-up, is there a worst moment? Is there something that you remember from your chief reader years that it still makes you shudder a little bit or wish you could have relived? Or I'd be curious, what was it you were regretting?
I only have one regret. I'm not sure how I could have done it differently, but I think it was the second year. I don't remember now, the first or second year that I was chief reader. Maybe it was the second year, but at any rate, I got a call on the first day from College Board and ETS saying, you look like you're way behind. You're going to need to go extra time. You're going to have to go extra time. You don't have enough readers. This is going to, you're going to have to do extra time. So we recommend you have a half an hour a day for the next 5 days or something like that. And, it didn't seem like a very good idea to me at the time because we just started out. And whatnot, but they were convinced, and the on-site ETS person at the time came up and said, yeah, you guys, there's no way you're going to have to do this. So we did it. We did it one day. We had people come in early, a half an hour early one morning. And, no one had this was the first time in the history of AP Psych that, the reading had gone over in any way, shape, or form from what it was supposed to do. So, and I remember Elizabeth always telling me, whatever I do, I just don't want to be here any extra time. As long as we get done on time, that's all. That's all. I don't want to be the first one to go extra time. And now I was the first one having to do extra time. And so I felt awful about that. And then it turned out in the end, we finished a half a day early or something.
Yeah. Of course.
We didn't really need to do it. And it was all, it was basically, yeah. So that's my one regret. Then the next year they did the same thing again. And I said, no way. I think we're going to be able to do this. We were even further behind at the start. And I said, no, I think this is let's just give me 2 more days. And if we're still out of line, then we'll do something about it. And then within a day and a half, within a day, we were ahead of schedule. So I avoided it after that. But that'd be my the one decision that really wasn't mine to make so much, but I do regret that happened.
Your story, Rik, illustrates, I think, one of the things that we've all learned over the years, and that is that it was difficult for people who weren't us, weren't our group, to understand that psychological scientists deal with data all the time, and that we have the ability to understand changing patterns of data and to project what may happen down the road 3 days from now, given the trends we can see in the data. And that was always a difficult thing to express or to communicate to the folks outside who would simply look at the numbers and say, you're behind. But if you've been there for a few years and seen the way the data would flow, you'd understand that it's okay to say, yeah, give us 2 more days because I think we'll be on track. And we always were, of course.
Yeah.
Ken, did you have any particular actions or difficult moments that you can talk about?
I can. It's not so much an action, but a truly difficult moment that had happily a good resolution. One day in Kansas City, we were at the end of the last day, and we were clearing all the tables, of course, and accounting for all the exams. We were all finished, and there was one missing.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
One exam out of how many 100,000? Well, we're all committed to the idea that this kid paid his or her fees and took the test. We can't leave until we find it. Well, the table leaders all understood, and we went through all the trash cans. We went through all the desks. We had everybody clear their paperwork and look through their files, and there was one exam missing. And we thought, oh my, what are we going to do? And so we all walked into the file room where there are boxes, hundreds, if not thousands of boxes of exams filed and stacked to the ceiling. And we see no alternative except to start going through them and see if we can find the exam, because we know it's there somewhere. So we put a bunch of boxes out on the table. Sherry Jansen opens the first one, and there's the exam lying sideways on top of the file box. That was the first time I ever believed in miracles.
I remember
That's
that.
a great story.
I remember that day because I was one of those people and going through this process of looking through boxes, and I was just like, "You have got to be kidding me, Ken! Come on, are you kidding? We could be here all night.
I know.
I have a martini to get to.
That was it. We were done. We're ready to celebrate. Yeah. But we were there. We were there.
Oh my gosh.
Ken, my biggest regret, I've got a biggest goof, but my biggest regret is actually relates to you. And I was so nervous about becoming chief reader. Again, just like being nervous about the acorn skit and not the reading, chief reader, I wasn't nervous about the work. I was nervous about the shtick. Like, what's going to be my shtick? Jane's hilarious and sings, and Jim did poetry, and you can't see me, but I'm saying poetry, and then Ken did real poetry, and I'm just like, what's my shtick? And I mean, I agonized because my time leading up to chief reader got extended a year for Ken's health reasons that he referred to earlier, and so I had years to worry about my shtick until finally someone, and I don't know who it was, said, Elizabeth, you are your shtick. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I was so worried about this that I talked to Ken about this in advance before my CRD year. And I said, help me with this transition, my CRD year. I'm going to be funny and you're going to be funny and we're going to transition together and you're going to help me and with the shtick, right? And then my CRD year, I had some pretty intense family, just stuff going on in the background. And I wasn't very funny that year at all. I was pretty distracted and pretty distracted. But because Ken interpreted what I was asking for as this kind of shtick partner, he didn't do his closing poem. He didn't write a poem. And when I asked him, why didn't you end with a poem? He said, well, because I thought you and I were going to do this thing together. And it's broken my heart ever since. Please forgive me for that. I'm sorry, because we missed out.
No apology needed.
So that's my big regret. My big goof, on the other hand, is it's that end of the reading where everybody's, you're looking at, there's only one table left. And this is now, we're in a big old ballroom, only one table left. Finally, the last table gets done. And so I released all the readers, did not check with ETS. Never really encoded that we check with ETS about releasing the readers. So my first year, I released all the readers. They start leaving to get on the shuttle. And then the ETS people hadn't even called the shuttles left. Like, there's a ton of stuff that goes on in the background for releasing all the readers that I just skipped. I never skipped it again. And my TLs, both the questions TLs, they had to stay. How long was it, Rik? For 2 hours, hour and a half?
Yeah,
and read all the boxes, we found, because I'd released all the readers. So, dang, didn't do that again.
Well, I wish I had known that was going to happen, Liz, because I could have told you how to deal with that. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on a public podcast or not. One day, we were well ahead of schedule midweek in Kansas City. And so I went to the ETS folks and said, I want to let folks out an hour early today, give them a little break. We're ahead of the game. And they looked at the data and said, no, you can't do that. And they said, besides, we can't do it without Mark's permission. Mark was the college board guy. And Mark's on an airplane somewhere, so we won't be able to reach him. Well, I happen to have Mark's phone number, so I called it, got him in an airport waiting room somewhere, explained the situation, and I said, here's what I want to do. And they told me I have to have your approval, so I'm calling you for your approval. And I said, the only thing is, can you call and tell them you have heard that we're doing well and that they should let us out, because if you tell them that I called you, we'll both be in a lot of trouble. And so he did that. He finessed it, and we got out early, and the folks who said no never did know what happened, except that we got out early with his blessing.
God bless you.
Can I tell you my proudest moment in APA reading?
Sure.
AP reading? Because this involves Eric, and he won't remember it. Some of you know Hal Miller. Hal Miller was perhaps the most conscientious, I don't know what to say, responsible reader that I ever met. When I was his question leader, he would ignore me when I was making announcements and just start reading. And I noticed that, but I knew Hal Miller, and I knew it didn't matter whether he paid any attention to my foolishness or not. In fact, one day at lunch, I came back early when he was already in there reading, and I said, Hal, I've noticed that when I'm making announcements, you never pay attention to anything. And he started to look sort of troubled. And I said, I just want you to know I don't care. Whatever you're doing, just keep doing it, But that's the kind of guy he was. And I always thought when I was going to make announcements or make jokes, my first thought was always, what will Hal think? If Hal won't approve of this, then maybe I shouldn't do it. He had a sense of humor, but he also had a real conscience and commitment to the work. Well, one day in Kansas City, asked a group of good readers to do something special. I forget whether we'd taken them off their regular question to do something urgent that came up, and the things that you do. And Eric and Hal were two of those people. And on the way back from lunch, I happened to pass them. And I just said, I want you to know we really appreciate your willingness to do this because it's disruptive and you had to learn something new and you weren't counting on it. And Eric smiled and sort of joked and said, yeah, well, you called us to do this. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And I laughed and said, yeah, that's it. And as I walked away, I heard Hal say, Eric, these people never scraped the bottom of the barrel for anything. This is first class. And I was never prouder of being the chief reader than I was at that moment, because if Hal thought we were doing a good job, that was good enough for me.
Yeah. He's a good guy. Bill Buscas speaks very highly of Hal.
Yes. Changed his life, he says.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was also an alien reader, as I recall. Super, super fast and always dead on with the rubric.
Yeah, if he disagreed with the rubric, it was time to change the rubric.
Yep.
Well, one off was right on. That's what I was taught.
Yeah.
Well, I could go ahead and mention, while it's not a goof or a regret, one of the most memorable moments of my chief reader experience was when I fired a reader before she actually read any tests.
Yes.
Yeah.
A world record.
Yeah. I forget what year it was, but we were trying to adjust to hotel life. So I'm thinking it might have been Daytona.
It was Daytona, yes.
And a brand new reader, an acorn reader, arrived and had her underwear in a bundle about the fact that she had to share a room, which had not been a secret for anyone. And so she threw a fit in connection with the people who were trying to check her in. And it was significant enough that they called the chief reader to see if you could calm this woman down. And so I got there, and in fact, she was out of control and really unhappy. And at one point she said, I just don't think this is going to work out. So I wonder if I just shouldn't leave. And I thought, great opportunity. And I said, I really think this has probably blighted your experience. And so I do think you should probably not do that. Thank you for coming. We'll get your car. We'll get you back on the road. You can go home. Everything's good. And I'm thinking, dodged a bullet there, because if the reader was that much trouble on the front end, that was going to be a high maintenance reader from hell throughout the entire experience. And about an hour later, I got a call from this woman on the road. She apologized and said, I think I've changed my mind. I think I probably want to give it a go. And I said, I'm sorry, we've already replaced you, which wasn't exactly true, but I just was not, the karma, the aura was just not, it was not right. And within minutes, it got around the community that I had fired a reader before she even had a chance to read one exam. And I think that probably did a lot for my reputation as someone who didn't truck foolishness. But an interesting moment.
It became why we were scared to prank you, maybe?
Are we sure that wasn't a prank?
I'm pretty sure it wasn't a prank. My spidey sense said it wasn't a prank, but just a difficult woman who wasn't reading her mail properly. And if she wasn't reading her mail, we didn't want her reading tests. Yeah. That was my judgment call.
She wasn't related to Richard Crenna, was she?
No.
Okay, just making sure.
If I can share, go ahead, Eric. You were going to say something.
No, you go.
If I can share a memorable moment that's not a regret or not a oops, but because I just want to be sure to get this in here, I just want to say this, and just wow, the support I got from the AP community during and after Hurricane Katrina. I can't overstate it. And I guess Ken, what you were saying about proud moments, I would say a proud moment I had as a chief reader is they ask us for it was the college board annual meeting. It wasn't maybe it was the AP annual convention. It had to be AP annual convention. And they ask a couple chief readers to speak to the whole big audience. Like, it really freaked me out. I got up there and you could see your face in all these video, it's like 3,000 people and but I had a chance to say what I'm going to say right now there. And it made me really proud to be able to say it to the really broad AP community. But it was an embarrassment of riches, the response I got from AP from her during and after Hurricane Katrina. I had colleagues at the time who were living in hotels who were, because we weren't allowed back home. And it was almost every state, not quite every state, but it was a lot of states that people had offered us home. And Tom Pusateri offered us his condo in Florida. That's where we ended up writing out the aftermath, and the gift card that the community AP psychology community got together and gave us money so we could buy stuff. And it's just, it was a really hard time, and to feel that level of social support made it a less hard time. And I just cannot be appreciative enough or say that enough. So I wanted to be sure.
I need to follow that up as well, because I had a similar experience. And that is, I had been out of the AP community for a while when my house burned down. This was about 8 years ago. And having your house burned down is quite the experience. I don't recommend it for anyone. Even the people you don't like, you don't want their houses to burn down. It's terrible. But I remember being at work while I'm trying to sort out everything that's going on. My administrative assistant at the time said, somebody must like you, because I got a check for $2,000 from the AP community, from people who were just donating money to make sure I was okay. And the fact is, insurance is a bit of a challenge in situations like this, and that was a godsend. And so the level of support when I wasn't even actively part of the AP community anymore was just astounding. So I think I've been public about thanking people, but I'll thank them one more time through this.
So I have a closing question I'm going to keep in the chamber. And Ken, I'm going to let you go here, but let's do this. Let me just let you favorite stories, favorite memories, just let you all riff as long as you want to go. And then I do have one closing question for you.
And I'd like to bring up just one thing. So it's a little bit of a bone to pick with the three other former chief readers that are here today. So we've been talking about rules. I don't know if this is not a favorite story, Eric, so I'm sorry, I'm already violating that. But I wanted to ask about this because it's a mystery to me. So when I became chief reader, there were certain rules that existed that I had to make sure that we followed each year. One of them was that there could be no chocolate in the reading rooms, which was due to some history gaffe, or, there are all these urban legends about why these rules came up, because history had somehow gotten melted chocolate and smeared them over essays and then ruined everything. And then at some point, I guess it was after the time that Chris Hackle left the reading, but there were no longer any drink tickets either. Nope, no drink tickets. Can't get drink tickets anymore either. So no chocolate, and so the no chocolate rule had been around for as long as I can remember at the AP reading, right?
It happened on my watch. I remember that.
Yeah. So, well, then my bone is with you then, Jane, because I remember going to my first chief reader meeting and somebody talking about all the chocolate they have at their readings. And I was just like, wait a second, you can't have chocolate at the reading. They were just like, what are you talking about? We've always had chocolate at the reading. And I was just like, what? And so I asked other chief readers. They're just like, yeah, of course we have. You can't have a reading without tons of chocolate. So there was never a chocolate rule, as far as I can tell. And I asked the ATS people, I asked the College Board people. None of them would ever say that there was a chocolate rule. There was never a chocolate rule. It only existed for psychology for some reason. So
well,
and the drink ticket rule was never a rule either, by the way. So I'm not sure. I think that might have been you, Elizabeth, that stopped the drink tickets. I'm not sure who that was, but yeah. So at any
rate,
both
stop
of those,
drink tickets
of all I know who. Really? Right? I know, right? But
well, if I can explain the chocolate rule, in fact, those ETS people are not telling the truth, because it was one of those ridiculous regulations that was handed down mysteriously to me. And I remember at the time going, what, did one book get smeared? Is this, we're going through this because somebody left a chocolate thumbprint on one book? And they said, yes. And so, in fact, it became very entrenched. And I don't know, maybe psychology readers are messier and there was more than one chocolate handprint, footprint, whatever. But yeah, it actually was from above. It wasn't something that I instituted. So I apologize for your strain.
Oh, we got handed down a no funny hats. You could not wear funny hats. And this was because some subject had a funny hat day. I don't know. They come down from some memo from somebody, and then it's not and then it's gone.
Yeah, because you couldn't wear your crown around.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, Elizabeth had this crown made as chief reader, as Queen Elizabeth, and she was prohibited from wearing that crown around the reading.
And I want to say that I am okay with that, although I'm going to say one thing about my crown. So I took, because, chief readers have had since Jane, a history of hats, right? Red hats. And it's actually really a nice thing because you can find us in the crowd if you need to. And so Ken had the Show Me the Data ball cap, and he gave me his ball cap, and I asked him, can I, I'm going to destroy this for my crown. And he's like, you can do it. So I made a crown that had his piece of Show Me the Data. And then each jewel was a picture of the past chief readers. And then it had a couple of other, I gave it to Rik, so I can't remember. It had a couple of meaningful things in it. And then we get this no funny hats rule. And I'm told I can't wear my crown. And I'd worn it, I think, for 2 years by then, maybe just 1 year, I can't remember. And then anyway, I called all the way up to College Board HR and talked to the top HR woman. And she said now, whether this happened or not, I don't know. But she said somebody had complained about the crown and that it made them feel like I was being condescending and a representation of colonialism. And I was like, that's all you had to say. I'll take the crown off. I believe in inclusion more than anything. I don't want anybody. If there's one person that feels that way, I can take the crown off. I set it on my table and, it was fine. But to come down with a no funny hats rule and pretend like it's about history or whatever, just tell me your clown crown.
There's also the specter of one person complained. It's like, really? Did really one person complain, or is this just another strategy? I think my favorite prohibition was bananas couldn't be transported from eating rooms. Like, bananas? Okay.
Bananas make up a strange, huge part of the history of the AP reading.
That's right.
It's true.
Only take one banana.
Gotta have plenty of bananas.
Can I ask about Ken's red hat? Ken, did your red hat make data great again by any chance on that red hat?
It said, show me the data.
Oh, okay.
And
not make data great again. I just want to...
That hat had a long history because I had it since 1997 or 98. We had a national high school teachers institute, summer institute at Nebraska Wesleyan when I was back there. And one of the readers, one of the participants, one of the high school teachers, I can't remember his name anymore, but I think he was from the state of Washington, got so fed up with hearing me say, show me the data, when they would talk about some outlandish thing, that he had this hat made for me and gave it to me before he left town. And so I'd had it all these years, and so I started wearing it at the reading because Jane had worn a red hat, and I thought, well, that's a good deal because they can, as Liz said, they can spot you in the crowd. He's the guy with the red hat, because we were big enough by then that I couldn't know all the readers anymore.
And by the way, that virtually assures that you never had a peaceful lunch.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah,
because
that's
people
right.
could find you easily. So,
yeah, that's right.
But it's still worth it.
That's why you get the big bucks.
Yeah, that's right.
And in fact, then, I think all of you know the story of the saucer, the flying saucer bar in Kansas City. Well, it turned out they have this tradition there that if a person drinks 200 different kinds of beer and recorded on their house computer, that you get a saucer on the wall, a plate with your name and your motto on it. And so our readers were complaining because they couldn't possibly do it in a week. And so at the end of 1 year, I went to the manager and I said, I bring all these people to town. They all come here, spend a boatload of money, and have a great time. Why can't we have a saucer? why can't a group get a saucer? Because I said, no one reader can do it, but our group could do it. And he thought it over and he said, yeah, let's do that. And so next year, when we were in town for the pre-reading stuff, I went down there and found the managers all sitting at a booth planning the day or something. And I recognized the guy who had told me the year before. I said, do you remember? And he said, yes, I remember. And I said, okay, how are we going to do this? Well, it turns out somebody has to keep a record. How would anybody know 300 different people were meeting the goal or not? So the word got out and 2 acorns came to me and said, we'll take care of the data. So they learned how to use the computer at the Flying Saucer bar, and everybody was instructed to keep their ticket and give it to these 2 guys so they could enter it in the computer. And we made it. And so then I said to the guy, how are we going to do this? We got to have a presentation. And he said, well, I can't get off work. And I said, well, you don't want me bringing 400 people down here, do you? Because, where would they fit? And he said, well, I think I could get away for 15 minutes. And so they had the saucer made up, and I asked the table leaders to vote on the motto that should go on the saucer. And they came up with a lot of creative ones, but the vote eventually was show me the data. So our saucer on the wall in Kansas City says AP Psychology, show me the data. Although it's not my favorite one on the wall there. My favorite is Jesus, and you thought I only drank wine.
That's good. Well, I've got bad news, Ken. It's no longer there. The flying saucer is gone, and everything.
The flying saucer is gone?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with this picture? How do we get our saucer back?
Well, we tried. I mean, we tried to go into the building where the saucer was, but it's just gone. Everything is gone.
Really?
Not only that flying saucer, but all the flying saucers.
It seemed wildly successful.
Yeah.
Your hat does live on as the beautiful crown piece of the red crown. So
I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that.
I hope it's on Rik's shelf in his office somewhere.
Yeah, I guess I could go back to Elliott now.
That's right. Back to New Orleans.
Yeah, back to New Orleans.
So before we close, are there any stories that any of you want to share, or any anecdote stories that just must be recorded orally for our oral history of AP reading, AP Chief Readers?
Well,
go ahead. I'm going to say mine's quick. Mine quick, Jane. Okay. My best friends and best mentors are from AP.
Oh, that's nice. I was just going to mention that, Eric, you brought up something that has lived with me on an almost monthly basis, and that's a reference to Richard Crenna, which most people are not going to relate to unless they were part of this. But it does explain how Elizabeth ended up feeling terrorized about shtick, because I lost a bet to the evil Dr. Susie Baker about whether Richard Crenna was alive or dead. And he was, in fact, dead, and I said he was alive. And I had bet Dr. Evil Baker the loser would have to sing karaoke at AP, because I knew that would just be horrific for Susie. Well, I lost, and so I had to sing for AP. And like a good academic, I went to the bar and researched what the song list was, and I found a song that was in my voice range. I'm an alto. It was a Roberta Flack song. I just didn't realize it was the longest song in the history of humankind. The first time ever I saw your face. Long. I was even bored by the time the song was over. But the bar was completely full of people. And I remember Elizabeth in the front row, because I believe she was the one that whipped out a lighter and started swaying back and forth. And so the entire audience was doing that to this god-awful song. So I thought, since I tortured people with that, and I was trying to figure out how does one come back from Jim's poetry, really bad poetry, let's face it, Jim, it's just terrible poetry. And I almost didn't become a QL because of the obligation to write a poem at the end. I thought this is going to be awful. But I decided that my shtick was going to be, when it was time to convene people, I would sing the rules of the road. Here's everything that you need to know, because it's boring to go through, make sure you come back on time and If you have to leave, let us know, and all that stuff. So every year I picked a new song and I sang. And I have to say, the first year I did a song from Chicago, When You're Good to Mama, Mama's Good to You. So then I became Mama at the AP reading. I partly did that because people were starting to allude to me as Queen Jane, and I've always hated that kind of reference. So I thought, well, I'm going to seize the narrative. I'll be Mama. I whipped out my boa and started singing, and the looks on people's faces, it was just priceless. But I recently ran across, while I was cleaning my computer, I ran across the year I did Rollin' on a Rubric. So I was Tina Turner, and I had the Rubricettes, and Elizabeth was one of those. And I've got a video of this hysterical. Yeah, it was that bad, Elizabeth. You were awful, but just an absolutely great moment.
I know I told you this recently, Jane, but I had not heard the Chicago version of Mama until recently. And I was like, oh my God, you did a great job. You did a great job.
Well, thank you. All I could remember was seeing Charles Brewer's face when I was singing When You're Good to Mama, because he had that, you got to be kidding me look on his face.
Do you think maybe as a bonus track, we could grab the audio from that video that you have?
It might be possible, but the video is actually better because then you'd see Elizabeth and Loretta and Amy.
And it's so funny because I'm just watching them the whole time. What are we doing now, ladies? What are we doing now? Oh, we're doing this.
Moves. That's what made it funny. You ran out of moves. No one heard anything I was saying because they were laughing too hard at the rubricettes.
Those should be preserved.
But it's all Richard Crenna's fault. And so whenever there is a psych gathering, inevitably someone's going to ask me if Richard Crenna is alive or dead. And rest assured, he is dead and has been for some time.
I think you're keeping him alive.
I think we keep him alive more than probably his own family does.
Even though he was 2 generations after me as chief reader, I can tell you the day I decided that Rik Seefeldt would one day be a question leader and chief reader. He was my rubric master in Daytona. And we were sitting around a big table with table leaders working on the rubric. And one of the things that I noticed right away was that every time somebody would make an inane or stupid suggestion, Rik would lean slightly in my direction and issue an expletive that I can't say on a podcast while writing down what he thought they should have said. And I said to myself, I've always known this guy is smart, but he can make a good decision on this run. You know, he ought to be in charge here. And sure enough, eventually he was. Yeah. And that sort of irreverence has always characterized, I think, not just chief readers, but all the people who are instrumental in the success of the AP program.
One of my mentors once said, the ability of a leader to hit the ground running in any direction, I think, is the characteristic that applies to people who get this opportunity. That whatever happens, you have to be able to rebound and move and make decisions and move on to the next problem.
And if you can move in 2 directions at once, that helps too.
Even better.
Yep.
Any other stories, my friends? I know our time is limited, and I appreciate all the time you've already given me. Any other stories you want to squeeze in? Thoughts? I have one last question for you.
What's your question?
All right, here it goes. I know that you gathered before to celebrate Rik's conclusion of his term of service as chief reader. There's a new incoming chief reader. His name is Elliot Hammer. What advice would you offer to the incoming AP Psychology chief reader, Dr. Elliot Hammer?
I'm going first because mine is short and sweet and to the point. Don't bring that shit home.
Just to be clear for our listeners who may not know the precise connection, would you like to make that explicit?
I live with him.
Thank you.
Well, the thing that I have told Elliot already several times, which is difficult to see, I guess, in the moment, or before you actually start doing the job, is to not sweat the little stuff, and to basically just enjoy the ride, enjoy the challenges that come up, because there'll be a lot of challenges that come up, but to just enjoy it because it goes by in a heartbeat, it's gone. And just it's all good, because again, you have so many good people around you, and to feel that support, to experience being supported like that with all these great people around you is something that I'd never experienced before. I'm unlikely to experience it again. And it's a wonderful thing. So it's a lot of work, a lot of headaches. Don't get caught up in the little stuff.
Yeah, that's good advice. Don't take any of it too seriously. I mean, it's serious work, and it's important work, and we have to be serious about that. But the rest of it, no matter what mistake you make, nobody's going to die. And your job is, as much as anything, to make sure that it's a good experience for everybody. And we know what to tell them if they can't take a joke.
Well, I guess I would add, and this is going to sound funny coming from me, because I only managed a couple hundred people. What number is he facing next year when he has to do this? How many readers?
There'll probably be about the same number that there were this year, probably about 700 readers.
Okay, so that's about double what I had. I think that you have to be prepared for all manner of what's going to happen that will influence people's lives. Parents die, children get in trouble. There are all kinds of interpersonal challenges that happen. And like so much of life, when you're a manager, 90% of your time gets taken up with 10% of the people that make you want to kill yourself. And simply not to overemphasize that as part of the job, and make sure that you stay in touch with all of those people who are truly wonderful. And that includes making sure that your support people, whoever your right-hand person is, that team supporting you in the back room, they're going to have your back, and they're going to let you know if anything is cooking. So I think you can trust the process. Historically, our readers don't let us down. They're wonderful people, and it was an absolute joy to serve them. Well, 90% of them.
I'm not the official representative of anything or anybody here, but I know, as a former reader, just listening to the four of you today and just reminiscing about my own experiences and imagining what our listeners will also appreciate. Thank you all so much for the time that you spent today, but more importantly, for all the service that all of you provided as readers and table leaders and question leaders and rubric masters and chief readers, and the significant chunk of your professional lives that you devoted to ETS and College Board and AP Psychology, and what you've given to students and faculty. It's really significant. And thank you for sharing that. So many people are going to get so much joy out of hearing all your voices. So even though I'm not the official representative, thank you so much for everything. It's gargantuan, the contributions that you've made. Thank you all.